Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. If you are here on YouTube and you'd like to actually be part of the conversation, and this is really a conversation, less of a broadcast, you're more than welcome to. You just need to travel through the set of links that we have here. You have to click on the link to get to Zoom, register in Zoom. And then once you're in Zoom, click on the link to get to Makana. And Makana is where we handle all of our questions and chat and so on and so forth. It's where we all are having this conversation, this scalable conversation, as I tend to refer to it as. We start about 6 o'clock and we start kind of working through things. You need to be here if you want to be on the panel, if you actually want to be part of the video conversation. If you think you have something to add, we'd love to have you. You need to be here by 6:40 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And then, if you want to check things out and make sure that you're going to fit in, make sure everything's going to work, you get here at 6:30, and you can kind of look at that. We're just kind of hanging out, having our tea and coffee and figuring our technical issues out. And then we start at 7 o'clock. 7 o'clock is general conversations. Any questions that you have about the media production or virtual production, it's a good place to ask it. It's a couple centuries, maybe 5 or 6 centuries worth of experience in this panel. So it's a really great place to ask those questions. It's good to ask them early rather than late. It helps us kind of manage time. Now, the second hour is generally something specific. So today we're going to talk about Stream Deck. A lot of us use Stream Deck to help kind of automate and make our jobs easier. And we've got a lot of great people here who have a lot of experience with Stream Deck. So we're going to be talking about that. If you have a question for the second hour, ask your question and then tag it in Mokana for the second hour. There's a little tag there. You can tag it like you can add a note. So tag it as second hour. It makes it a lot easier for us to manage what you have there rather than just type in second hour, tag it as second hour. And that makes it easier for Bill to kind of manage through that. Second hour, as I said, today is Stream Deck. And then, we have second hours every day, and you can get those on the emails that you get from Zoom. So I won't go through them all, but you get an email every day, and it has the agenda in it. So you can check it out there. A reminder that I haven't put in the agenda yet is that our first evening session will be at 6 o'clock Pacific Standard on Monday. So we're going to move to we're setting at 6 because there's another event on, and I just don't have all the information, but there's another event in the East Coast at 7 to 9. And so we're going to come in right after them. And so we're going to, 6 o'clock on Mondays, we're going to see how Mondays go. Just one day a week. We'll do Mondays for a month. And if it works out and there's enough people coming to both Monday morning and Monday evening, then we'll probably keep doing it. If not, we won't. so that'll be that. So anyway, so we're gonna test it in February. All right. So let's jump into the questions. Go ahead, Bill.
We start off with one from Guy Cochran here in the panel from Seattle, and he asks, is there such a thing as a cell phone with an HDMI input for streaming?
This sounds like a setup. It sounds like a setup, like, is there something like that? So, Guy, what do we have coming up here?
Hey, bada. It was like a softball, right? No,
yeah.
I was looking at...
You threw the ball and you caught it.
Yeah. So Mickey posted this thing up earlier. It's the Sony Xperia Pro, and it looks like it's the first one like this. It's a $2,500 phone that has an HDMI input. So, and then there's an app to stream. So this looks really, really cool.
So the big thing is that if this app, if it will look to all apps as the native camera, so if that's what Sony has done with this HDMI in, they will sell a lot of these phones at $2,500 because this basically bypasses Instagram and TikTok and everything else. It basically undermines their whole idea of blocking real cameras, and influencers will go crazy over it. Now, if it doesn't do that, if it's just another input and it streams, it'll do okay. But if it's able to look to the app as if it was the native video input, it will be there are crazy little ones made by Alibaba. You can buy on Alibaba that do this, where they're a little box and they have HDMI in, HDMI out, it's Android in the inside, but they never work quite right. So it's been kind of this thing that we've struggled with, and I still shoot a screen with a phone. This is the easiest way to get it in there. I mean, you can use stuff like Yellow Duck, and there's a couple other ones, but they're never that stable. Whereas this could be theoretically unstoppable, because if the app doesn't know that it's getting that, then it would be hard to block, and it changes the nature of everything about streaming to those platforms if it's successful. Go ahead, Stuart, and then Schy, and then Bill.
So, Guy, I'm still using a BlackBerry Torch that is now 7 or 8 years old, and I have not seen a mobile phone that I actually want yet until today. Does that one do 4G or 5G, and what's its Wi-Fi connectivity reported to be like?
It's a 5G phone, and one of the things that I'm interested in is it actually has an app on it that'll show you how your connectivity is doing as you move around a building. And typically you would use this as like a Wi-Fi app to figure out, where the strongest connection is, but this one's going to work with 5G. So maybe you could use like an HDMI to SDI converter, throw your camera, 300 feet away and still run to where you get the best transmission. So that's
I'm thinking of a handheld camcorder at the start line of a drag race where I've got a camera operator doing a close-up of the burnouts and what have you, and having them use the monitor being their own phone with the HDMI in, then the Wi-Fi connection back to OBS or vMix. That would be just amazing, because that just wipes out the need for a separate IP box and external screen and Wi-Fi connection on top of the camera. It's all in one. That's brilliant.
It may seem like $2,500 is a lot of money, but as a backhaul solution with 5G, if it actually works, I could see a lot of people using it. Go ahead, Schy, and then Bill.
So is it an Atmos Ninja that you can make a phone call on is the question? And
it's better.
Well, because the question is, can you turn it on to do not disturb? Because I mounted
I'm sure you can.
My 5 onto a rig shooting down onto and then somebody made a phone call in the middle of the shoot, and so I'm trying to reach up there and turn it off. So
I mean, the thing is that I'm sure that with at $2,500, but the thing that makes it better than some other monitor, now it may not be as accurate. Hopefully they spent the time to make it accurate. I know right now when we're streaming specifically, like most of my time right now is just streaming HDR. We consider the most accurate monitor that I'm looking at is my phone, period. Like my phone is like, if I open up my iPhone 12, that is the most accurate representation of the color and that I can get on set typically of the stream. And so if they spent the money to get the monitor right, that you could actually use it as a fairly accurate monitor. The advantage of it is that you're no longer waiting for somebody to develop some tools for it. You have now an input, and you have everyone able to develop Android apps that are going to be able to do all kinds of things. It could be scopes, it could be, controls, it could be remote, all kinds of things can be done with that phone. Because it's connected to that. And I got to say, like the only other Android other than test phones, like basically burners that I get to make sure the things are working on Android. The last phone that I was excited about that I bought was the Hydrogen. Didn't go very far, but it's still great. I take pictures with it still. It's a stereo phone from Red. So I bought the Hydrogen phone. This will be my next phone. Like that, not my next phone that I use all the time, but this will be the next Android phone and I'm about as dyed-in-the-wool iPhone user as you can get. And so for me to be excited about spending $2,500 on an Android phone is well done by Sony. Bill, and then Paul, and then Beju.
I'm just looking back at the incredible amount of development that smartphones have had over the course of just the last 10, 15 years. Yeah. It's been amazing. And if this pace keeps up, it's hard to imagine. I mean, Apple is working, as everybody knows, on helping medical device connect.
Well, I mean, the main thing is that the Android, this is where the Android does better, because it just lets you hack more, into what you need to get done. Is not where Apple does well. And so it's a genius move by Sony to go somewhere that Apple isn't going to follow them, and carve out an area for them. Paul, and then Beju, and then Stuart.
Yeah, a couple of things. One,
real quick, because we're gonna
in addition to the HDMI in, it's also got HDMI out, and it also has a built-in network visualizer app that you can have a shortcut key that helps you find the best position to get a signal.
Yep. That's good. It's why it's a pro. I mean, it's got some pro tools to it. So it's
HDMI out in addition to HDMI in.
Yeah,
that's incredible.
And where the HDMI out could come into it is also that you could have a two-way conversation with someone over, something like Zoom or something else, an app that's developed for two-way conversations, and both sides have high quality cameras and possibly even double ending, but they're able to see each other going back and forth over 5G. Pretty interesting. Beju, and then Stuart. And then Chris, and then we're going to move on.
Yeah, just basically on the monitor side, it's a 6.5-inch OLED, so it should definitely look good. for monitoring as well. They are being a bit weaselly about how it will show up to other apps. They're saying it'll work to third-party social media services, but they aren't clarifying how, whether their app will stream to it or it will show up as a default camera. So we'll probably know a bit more once we get our hands on it. And yeah, it has got a decent built-in camera as well. So as Stuart mentioned, as an encoder, which you can also use its own camera, it's a nice option.
Yep. Stuart and then Chris, real quick.
Once this thing launches, can we make sure we get the Filmic Pro guys on for a second hour, because what they will do with it is going to be interesting to watch.
They don't. I don't know. I don't think Filmic does anything with Android. I don't think that they. I don't think that's a. I don't think. I think they're IO. Beiju. Are they? Do they do?
Pretty sure
Android?
there's an IO app.
They both have both a camera app and a remote app. They don't have cross-talking for the remote yet, I think, but I think it's coming soon.
Yeah. No, that'll be really interesting. Go ahead, Chris, and then we'll move on.
I'm just skimming the article, and it says that it streams directly to YouTube. And it has support for Streamlabs and StreamYard, and for streaming to Twitch and Facebook Live. It doesn't say anything else specifically, but I linked the article in Mukana. So
that's great. That's great. Next question.
Moving to TJ Asher's question from Minneapolis, and here on the panel most days, can Guy share or show how he did the screen sharing and picture-in-picture changes he did in the show yesterday? And do you want to describe them, Guy?
Sure. Yeah, it's a combination of vMix and an ATEM. So it kind of looks like this. So I've got the iPad that's running, and that's what allows me to send a browser window or whatever else we want to show. And then it goes into vMix, and I've got a little Stream Deck that's allowing me to flip like myself in. So I'm just pushing a button on the Stream Deck right here to do that. And then I have another button that allows it to fade back and make that overlay go away. That's it.
Cool. Very cool. Next question.
Nick Prenger of Des Moines, Iowa says, do you need the Zoom Room kits to use Zoom Rooms?
No, if there's a kit, I don't think you need a Zoom Room kit. I mean, a Zoom Room is just a computer that is defined as a Zoom Room. The main thing is that once you set that up, I mean, what makes it a kit, I guess, is that it is clearly defined as a Zoom Room. Once you launch it, it's taking over. You can't administer the Zoom Room from the computer that is putting out the monitors. So, that computer gets taken over, and then from there, you administer it from a web portal or a tablet, to make it run, and they're pretty good. Good, John.
Yeah. Now, there are a number of vendors that make what they call a Zoom Room kit, and the advantage of it is you go into a room, you hang one of them, you literally just hang the monitor on the wall, turn it on, and it's a Zoom Room. And depending on how your enterprise system is set up, you can configure it remotely. So that's typically when people talk about Zoom Room kit, it's that where you walk into, plug the device in power and Ethernet, and it's on your network.
Right. That sounds good. Next question.
Alton Christensen of Brooklyn, New York says, what are the options for wired in-ear monitors for two people? And he mentions Me Audio, MEE Audio, participating together on a single Zoom call. Fancy tech is not an option. Multi-headphone amp is almost too complicated, though worth considering. But simpler is better. Suggestions?
I mean, yeah, I think what I think Leland's showing is what we've used a lot, a Y. So that's just a 1/8 inch or Y adapter will work with two headphones. Go ahead, Bill.
If you use a splitter like that, though, you will get a little diminution in the amount of signal coming out. So if you don't have some kind of an active amp to boost it back up, just make sure your device has enough output gain so that you can pump it up. And
we've used those for a decade without any real, tangible issue for the end user. I mean, usually there's more volume than's necessary, and that small loss hasn't been that big of a deal. Remember, the one thing that makes things a lot easier is extensions. So like a 10-foot extension or a 6-foot extension off of those is going to let the people sit naturally and then run it up behind their chair, as opposed to if you just put that Y in and you take their Apple iPhones or whatever you're going to put in there, everyone's like hanging there, and it's not nice looking. Go ahead, Chris Fenwick, and then Comfort, and then Matt Cool.
Some of those Y adapter gizmos will actually have a little attenuator on one half of it. So you let the person who wants to hear it the loudest adjust the volume. They plug into the one that's not attenuated. There you go. And then on the other one, that person Typically, my wife, she'll want to turn it down a lot less than what I have it at.
Yeah, there you go,
She
Chris.
has dog ears.
Chris.
Yeah, if he does want to go with a headphone amp, here's a Rolls headphone amp, and you know, I'm sure it's under probably $50 or something, and it's got 4 outputs and it's powered and comes with a 15-volt DC adapter. If he wants to go that route, I've used it many times and it is good.
Yep. Matt, cool.
Yeah, I was just going to say, similar to what Chris said about the different volumes, you should maybe want to use the same brand of headphones if you want to have the same volume. But if you know, because every set of headphones will come out at a different volume, and yeah, not everybody's ears are the same, and people want them at a comfortable listening level.
Yep. Beju and then Roscoe.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether this is too complicated or not, but if it's on a Mac, you can use sound source and enable 2 outputs at the same time to listen to the same thing. So you could have one USB headphones or USB adapter and one using the normal 3.5. So you would have independent levels basically listening to the same thing.
And, you know, not the cheap solution, but the 2 things that we've used that are slightly, just as a context, is HX3s from Sound Devices makes a great, you got 3 inputs, 1 input, you got balanced all the way there, and then you can put it out to the headphones and it's really nice. The other one is we use the Behringer 8-channel one when we have a bunch of people in a round table, and they're great because you have, again, individual controls, not what you're looking for here, but just a real quick, like if you want to turn it up a couple notches from a quality perspective, those kinds of things are pretty useful. Go ahead, Jeff.
The second person could come in and just use a second device, use their phone on the Zoom call as the audio monitor only, and leave the mic muted, leave the camera off, and just listen on their phone.
The hard part with that is that they'll hear themselves back in that environment delayed. So you'll hear themselves about 200 milliseconds behind, and some people can do that well. Most people have a hard time concentrating if they hear themselves 200 milliseconds behind. Next question.
Beju from here in the panel. And
sorry, Roscoe, did you have one more thing to add there?
I was going to say, you guys are overcomplicating it. One set of headphones, pull the wires apart, put one in one ear only.
There you go. Absolutely. The reason that I like to have the extensions and have a Y is because you can extend them out and really let people sit wherever they need to sit, and it makes it a little easier than we've done the pull it apart and Y thing. It's just that they kind of still end up limited in where they can sit, and you end up seeing it. Go ahead, Bill.
Oh, okay. To the next one, we're going to move over to Beju in India here on the panel. What does the panel think of the new flagship mirrorless 8K camera, the Sony Alpha 1 that was just announced? And he has a link to a story about it.
Looks cool. It's 8K. It's got a lot of processing power. I always think it's funny when they have a flagship that has a lower megapixel than the one that costs a lot less. So it does have a lot of other features in it that I think are useful. I'm kind of curious as to whether this is actually what we were seeing with the NFL as opposed to what we thought was an A7. I just don't know if that's the case or not. Beju?
Yeah, they do mention that it does have 4K, raw output over the HDMI 422. And it also supports the same cinema color space that you see on the new full frame, I believe what's the one? FS6 and FS7.
Right.
So it can match nicely with those. So it looks like an interesting way, especially for a gimbal mount. And then I can't see anything in the details yet, but the Ethernet out looks really tempting. They mentioned, is it just for control and FTP, or does it do streaming as well? I can't see any details on it yet.
Yeah. I mean, 8K is coming, so it looks cool. When I think of the way I've been using the Sonys mostly is for photogrammetry. So to me, what I need is resolution of the stills, period. Jeffrey?
Yeah, and I think this is also going to work really well with the Sony announcement we talked about earlier about the Xperia phone. I have a feeling that they're going to have software that works back and forth in their garden right there.
Yeah, that's a pretty hot solution. Next question.
Matt Cool of Montreal, Quebec. Does anyone use a 5G hotspot like the Netgear MR5200, and would you recommend it?
I don't know if anyone's using them yet. Go ahead, Jeff.
And when it comes to 5G, it's a hit and miss. It depends on the area. And is it real 5G or sort of 5G? In which AT&T, I have 5G on my phone, but of course it's not. But I've tried a couple different ones, and so far it's not impressive. It's not worth the expense.
Yeah, I mean, we're still just early days of 5G, and I think that's the problem is that a lot of stuff is kind of half working, not full coverage, not really 5G, not enough infrastructure. So I mean, it's not probably the time that I would probably dive into it right now, but if you needed to, it might be worth it. But it would definitely need some extensive testing, and it'd probably be very much location specific, as to whether it's useful or not. Bill?
Yeah, the main problem with that is that AT&T was allowed to put 5G on all their phones with a little thing that lights up, but that's not the real 5G. The millimeter wave 5G is really slow rolling out, and it has some issues. I mean, it doesn't penetrate walls, as I understand it, as well as the regular cell phone coverage, so you're going to need some sort of access point closer. I know in our neighborhood, they are starting to put those out, but it's pretty rare around America to have a true millimeter wave 5G availability that'll get you the full speed and all the advantages of the technology.
Well, there is one advantage is there's not many people on it. So that is definitely an advantage where if you're on a 4G and you've got a congested area, say for those of us that do sports, when there's sports happening, there's going to be a lot less people in the 5G span. And that range is definitely more saturated in the 4G and LTE bands.
Yeah.
So we're using it with the live view that we have, one of the latest live views we have, the LU800 has one of the modems in there, and I rarely see it connect at true impressive speeds.
Yeah, Chris?
I think when I brought up this question a while back, wasn't it said that Verizon is the only carrier that's going to support that millimeter wave? Or am I remembering that wrong?
T-Mobile is also.
Oh, okay.
They'll all go after it, but it's
They'll all go, eventually.
I admit that I still look at it. I mean, probably my dislike for 5G is it's kind of like why we can't have good things like fiber to our house is because all these companies spent so much money on 5G and it's just a huge boondoggle. Anyway, next question.
Jonas Dattel of Reutlingen, Germany says, Alex, what platform do you use to stream HDR and what kind of streams are these?
I don't think I can talk about that at the moment. Sorry. I'm kind of, I think I'm too tied into some NDAs, but I think I can safely say that because I've said it in the past, my primary interest is in vision. So and less about, I mean, but you can now stream to you can stream to YouTube, for instance, in PQ and HLG. But most of my interest is in Dolby Vision. But that's all, I think it's all I can talk about right now. Next question.
Schy Gleason here in the panel from Seattle. Can Schy give a report on doing a 100-person Zoom cooking event with the NEA and Madeleine Smithberg and Matt in the kitchen?
You asked your own question.
And he has an answer.
It's from Schy Giesland. Can Schy do it? It's like you literally threw the ball to yourself.
Well, I'm taking my cue from Guy Cochran. I follow the best.
No, but he made it. He threw it to somebody else who then threw it back to him. You literally just threw it up in the air and then caught it.
I'm just get to the point.
All right, go ahead, Schy.
Well, the question is, we did non-shipping of a box of food, which we're doing Thursday night with Amazon, but we physically had 100 people on a Zoom meeting that had been sent a recipe, that had been sent a run of show, that had been and it was a part of their national kickoff and first time they were gathering. And what we observed was they showed up for the first 10 minutes when the president was talking. But then what we immediately noticed when they went into the 45 minutes of let's cook together, well, about 80% of them physically muted we still had the same 90 connections, but about, like I said, 80% did not participate. Then we had, again, about 20% physically doing the actions of cooking and enjoying it. And then we had a lot of others just participating, just watching us do things, and Madeleine tell her anecdotal thing and her stories in and amongst, not touching hot pans with her bare fingers. So it was just an interesting, again, as we continue to do these experiences, how much people want to participate versus just observe. Those are the two critical questions that go ahead.
Well, we see that here. I mean, obviously we don't, there's a group of people here that are talking There's another group that is just watching in Zoom. There's another group that's just watching on YouTube. There's another group that's just listening in Mukana. So there's a kind of a couple stacks of people here that are participating at different levels. I think that the number of people that are going to actually participate is generally going to be lower. I think that the more hurdles that are created. We did a bunch of cooking shows with MasterChef, and one of a couple of things that we saw there was that it depends on what kind of food is required. Also, like, so if you do anything that might have allergies or might have other things, you start having, or look complicated or difficult. If they require any tools that they may not have, everybody doesn't have, like literally a lot of our stuff just had to be pans and pots and a knife, and if we need more than that, then we're probably not going to do it. Those are the kind of things that happen. And I think that this gets back into, and a single event is one thing. I mean, I think that building an audience that wants to cook together, you'd end up with 50 or 100 or 200, 300 people that all are cooking together. But that's because
that's what we're doing.
You're attracting people who you're attracting right now. You're working on a group that doesn't normally cook together. So there's going to be a huge percentage of them who just don't like to cook. Like they're interested in being part of it, but they're not cookers, cooks.
The Thursday night experience is we physically put, as you again suggested, we call it a party in a box. And we are physically putting the food, we're not doing the utensils, but we are expecting certain items that they will have, salt, pepper, but we are putting in the butter. And so we will report back after tomorrow night's experience.
I think you'll end up with more participation when the more of the tools that you send out, the more of the participation you're going to get, because it's just going to be, and then a lot of it is the presentation of all those things. When they open the box, is it overwhelming or is it easy to open? Is it easy
We've been introduced to a thing called Uline, which has a lot of concepts that
Uline is literally my favorite catalog.
Now you tell me. Now
favorite
you
catalog.
tell me.
Like it has been for 10 years. Uline, then Sweetwater. Are like, are my, and then B&H. B&H is a little overwhelming, but Uline and Sweetwater are like my two favorite catalogs that I still get in print. John and then Courtney.
So I mean, I think those numbers are what you'd expect. And in our house, the kitchen is not in my control. It is the one room where I have to ask permission to put an electronic device in. So I've been wanting to do that. And my wife has told me I'm not going to put multiple cameras in the kitchen. And she's a wonderful cook. She's done on television cooking, but I have invaded every other space in this house between me and my son. So that may be part of the challenge.
Well, John, I do want to put a portal in with Graham Care, and it might be happening very soon. So we'll be talking.
It's Courtney.
Just a little clarification. So you were sending out a care package with all the ingredients to 100 people, and that was just local in Seattle, or are they nationwide? Or
two events. Monday night was just the recipe, and they cooked with.
When did they get the recipe? How far in advance?
A week.
Okay, that's good.
So they had the opportunity to buy the noodles, to buy they had the tools, the ingredients, the tools. So they had a listing, and they had an expectation that they were supposed to be in this meeting together. That was their first launch meeting of these presidents of the NEA across the United States. Now, when the one gentleman fell asleep, it's like, do you mute him? Do you hope he's not dead? I don't know. That was but he left his camera on and he was dead center in the shot. It's like, okay. Anyway, but Thursday night.
And as a note, I would definitely mute him.
Yes to muting. Yes.
Well,
yes
I mean,
to muting.
Visually. And
visually.
That was the other thing is this was the huge fail. I think I will demand or request or require, what's the better word, that we manage the Zoom meeting, because it was kind of, John, to your point, I was kind of surprised how many teachers, and we're on every Saturday, I'm going to ask, is Zoom is not the platform that everybody in the nation in the education space is familiar with. There was a lot of confusion on how to push buttons and things.
When did the event start? Before the event started, like what was that? How long was the pre-show?
I demanded that it was 30 minutes. Requested. I required that we were connected with the leadership 30 minutes before, and that's when I discovered I should have been hosting, and they wouldn't. That wasn't what was in their plan.
Right.
So again, there's just a lot of buttons and a lot of things and things you have taught us and we've learned together.
Yep.
But Thursday night, Courtney, to your question, is execs from Amazon, smaller group, 20 boxes, 40, 50 people will be participating in a 2-hour 4-course experience. So take out this, take out that. Here's the recipe. Here's the menu. Here's the next menu. Here's the next menu. So it will be a sequence of fun in probably 2 hours.
Right. I mean, the cooking thing will always be a little bit more challenging. And the ones that we've been super successful with was tastings, because they don't have to do anything other than open it up and pour it in and eat it. So wine tastings, wine and cheese pairings and food pairings and stuff like that are really great online.
We do have a 1.5 happy hour. What are we calling it? We're calling it a happy 1.5 hour with a media group here in town. And it'll be just that. It'll be just puff pastry and break open the bottle of wine that the company gave them earlier.
Yeah, that's great. Hopefully they still have it. Anyway, next question.
Gavin Grace,
thank you all.
Of Manchester, UK, not New Hampshire. Are the panelists using the same audio meter tool for lining up their feeds? Are all the panelists, I guess, using the same audio?
Well, we are, because we have it in front of us. So there it is. There's the mic check, the office hour mic check that is up there. And so we're all using the same one because it's all going, it's all piping through this system. So I don't know if we all use the same ones in post, but anyone else? I think that's, I don't know of other ones that anybody else is using. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Yeah, I'm using WLM, but what would be a good comparable app to the WLM meter?
Yeah, go ahead, Bill, and then Roscoe.
Yeah, I think we're a little unusual. We are a technology group at heart, so having both WLM for audio levels and also Geisge DVE store window showing scopes gives people who are technically oriented a chance to look at all of these things in a technical frame. And I think that's just consistent with our mission statement, kind of.
I think that one of the things that I'm going to experiment with is either using Spectre or Sonic Atom and not replacing, but adding to lots of screens, but adding to the screens that we have here, so you can see audio meters, that are like, these are meters, but you can have what I really want is audio history, because then a panelists can look at themselves over its audio history. The way we set it up in Spectre is super easy to understand whether you're low or high, because it's much more visual. You're not seeing the bounces, you're just seeing the history. And what we do is we change the colors based on where it is. So it's all green, or it's red, or it's, like purple means that it's too low, red means it's too high. And you can just look down while you're talking and see what it looks like. And so that's kind of on its way, but those are just levels where it's less of it's not loudness. Go ahead, Leland.
I just use one that's kind of old school. If anyone's interested in playing with MV Meter, which is another plugin very similar to WM Meter, it has a choice of several of the old peak VU meters that you're used to seeing, along with many of the other normal avenues that you can test. I'm not an audio engineer, of course, by any means, so I just use these by visual and hearing. So I'm just looking for peak levels to make sure I don't overboard.
Beju and then Courtney.
Yeah, one good alternative to WLM is the Ulean audio meters. It has a basic free version, which also has a standalone mode, so you can just use that. And it has the history as well that you were mentioning, Alex. So it's a nice way to really see. So I do use that for monitoring my vMix instances. I normally have that running when I'm getting a remote feed in. So I can actually monitor if the feed drops or something. I can catch it quickly on that, faster than on the video as well.
That's great. Courtney?
I just use, a lot of us here on the panel are using ATEM Minis as our source, and I just route the output of my mixer, which is actually going to Zoom, into the ATEM Mini so that I can have a level. I use level meters in the multi-view to tell me how my microphone is doing even before I'm gone on the air or streaming. And that way, once you establish that level, then I don't touch the levels, then I know when I'm in the ballpark just by looking at the meters in the ATEM.
Absolutely. Next question.
Comes from Jeff Francis, often here in the panel. And Jeff asks, help me calculate bandwidth needs. I have an ATEM Mini Pro streamed to YouTube, concurrent Zoom meeting, pinning 2 for ISO at 720p, and then feeding that program into a Zoom meeting. Minimal up or down speeds that are going to be required to get a smooth experience out of that setup.
I'm figuring stream from the ATEM is 6 meg up.
Yeah, and do you have
Looking-
and then you have the zooms are 720 and there's 3 computers. You have two ISOs and a meeting computer, is that right?
Yes. I should be able to pin 2 on one of those.
So
two
I would
screens.
say I would look for 25 up. 25 up and 15 down. Well, I'd go 25 both ways. I mean, you're going to always have way more down than you have up. But you know, basically you're looking at a little over 12 utilization, and then I double it. You know, like it's you know, you want to have headroom. If you don't have headroom, I mean, you could say minimum 12 or 15, but otherwise you'll start to see breakup. In my opinion, you know, if you have 3, at least on the way back to those ISOs, and the problem is they all just use it. You can't say, oh, give these less. like give these ISOs less on the return, you know, with Zoom. Zoom is on the 720p, it's 3.25 megabits per second. And I believe on the 1080, it's 6.5 is the 1080 connection. Looking at what we've seen.
It's one Zoom meeting and just pinning 2 of the people in it. It's not individual ISOs for each participant.
But each one will be doing a send back. So each one will send, if it's one Zoom meeting, but each computer that you're ISOing out, unless you're doing one computer ISO, like, are you using one? How many it's just every computer connected to Zoom is going to use up 3.25 up.
One computer and pin 2 people in that meeting.
Okay, then
and take
then it's
HDMI feeds into the ATEM.
Right. So then it's only 2 computers, right?
Yeah.
So it's still 6 plus the 6 on your ATEM. And I missed the other one. So yeah, so it's 6 plus the 6 on the ATEM, and then double it. You know, I mean, that's the safest way to do it. I mean, could you get away with 10 or 15? Maybe, but you know, you have a pretty high probability that the Zoom will hog out the RTMP. You know, and so, you know, if you had SRT or Zixi, you know, I'd be more likely to say you could get away with it, and you could, you know, have a PC in there that wrapped your RTMP out, you know, took something out of your ATEM and wrapped it in Zixi and put it up, and it'll ignore everything. It'll take all the bandwidth that it needs on the way up if you run it through Zixi. I mean, because it just ignores all the rules.
Alex, is there anything more sophisticated, or do you need anything more sophisticated than the standard Ookla speed test that's just on the web that most people use for judging your up and down? Is that good or bad? Or
it usually runs a little low, so we like it because it's conservative. You know, like so we like it because it's usually we're going to get something better than that. It's, you know, there's other ones that'll be more optimistic about your, but that's,
so if that tells you you're getting 25 megabits per second up, you're safe.
Yeah. So that's why we tend to use it. But I would say 25 up, and you know, and then as much as you can get down, but 25 up and probably 25 down will probably get you what you needed to do that. And you could probably get away with something less, but you'll probably see idiosyncrasies, macro blocking, frame drops, so on and so forth, if you drop below that. Guy.
Yeah, if he's pinning, that's a down. So you're only sending one up and then one more
computers.
up.
He's got 2 computers that are going up. That's going to be 6.5 megs, and then it's going to be the ATEM, which is 6. So
can I get by with one if I'm just pinning megs. 2 people?
Sorry.
Can I get by with one computer if I'm just pinning 2 as feeds into the ATEM, and then one, and that'll feed back to them. So one Zoom computer.
You can.
And only 720, not 1080.
So, I mean, that would make it 20 megs instead of 25. You know, I mean, it's, you know, to do that is what you know, I mean, it's 5.
And I have 20
megabits.
up, so I'm right at the danger zone.
Yeah, I mean, if you said, "Oh, I have 20 up," I'm saying this is what I would ask for. If you have 20 up and you test it at 19 or 20 up, you'll be okay. You know, and nobody else is using it, and nobody else is on the net, no one else is doing FTP, and no one else is like, those are the reasons I ask for so much headroom is because of the other things that happen on the network. If you have control of the WAN and the LAN and you can lock it all down, 20 will be fine. If it's 20 to a location like a cafe, and you don't have control over everything, you know, like usually what happens is if someone gets close to my limit, I will want to put my own hardware at the WAN and then hand them back the the internet. And then what I do is for a location is I use Meraki stuff, but what basically we do is put a cell connection in to the Meraki, and we give the house back the cell, and then we take everything that they had with the wired, and everyone, when they go on their little phones, that works. Doesn't work very well, but during the show it works okay, and then they and we get our show done. So if you do something like that where you have control, you could get away with it, but you have to have control over the whole pipe. Chris?
A few months ago, several months ago now, we did that shopping show that I've talked about in the past, right, where we had to kind of demand a certain amount of headroom, and I used some numbers that I had gotten from the group here. And I got to say that there's a psychological barrier to standing or sitting in front of somebody and saying, I need this number, and they're going to push back and they're going to go, but, and then you just have to kind of get over it and say, I need this number, or I can't, I can't do it. And eventually what happened is they said, okay. And what was amazing is all of a sudden they brought in this network specialist company, right, out of Sacramento, and all this, and there was this whole team of people working. I was like, oh my God, I made that happen. But sometime, there's always the first time James Cameron asked for $100 million to make a movie. After that, it's much easier. It's the first one that's tough.
Yeah. Jeff?
I recently fought that actually for a broadcast, and I needed 100 by 100, which you think would be decent in the middle of a city that would be easy to get to.
Tough.
And it was impossible. Literally, we had 4 different providers, and so they said, "Oh, well, look, we got you 4." Whenever we got there, of course, we gave them the specifics that we needed. When we got there, the IT goes, "Look, I got you even more than 100 by 100. I got you 4 modems at 45 up each."
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, thanks, IT guy, but that's not how it works.
Yeah.
So then it was a challenge.
Mine was in Union Square in San Francisco, and it was super difficult, but they eventually somehow they did it. And there was just the thing. It was part of me kind of, channeling my inner Alex.
Yeah.
I need to have this,
No, you have to put your foot down. You absolutely do have to put your foot down. It's I can't make it happen without this.
There are so many places where we do that because the most expensive thing for most of your clients will be failure. When things break up and their brand looks bad, or the show breaks apart, and you have to have hard conversations. And the difference between folks that are kind of hacking their way through live streams and professionals, or people that the professionals will ask for things and be willing to turn it down if they're not gonna, if it's not gonna come out the other end. Now, again, Jeff, I think that at 20 megs, if you have control over the house, you're fine. If you do not have the control over the house, you are not fine. You're going to be on the edge there. And so it's just a matter of getting control of the WAN, handing the LAN back to them under your control. And you can give them a little slice, enough to make them a heartbeat, and you take the rest of it. All right. Next question.
I'll test it out and let you know.
Let us know. Yeah, absolutely.
Moving on, Manolo Lorenzo is in next with any of the panelists using external scopes for picture when running a stream?
Absolutely. All the time. Every show. No close seconds. I do not run shows without scopes. Ever. Never. Never. I started off using them as eye candy for the client, because you come in, they ask you to stream, and that's all they're asking you to do, and all you need is this little computer and a laptop, and I got little elementals, and a laptop is all I had, and I had to do something that made it look like I was working. So I put the scopes up, audio scopes and video scopes and everything else, so that there was an array, and I took up a table and everything else. But it got to the point where we could have problems. I had one where they changed the polarity of one of the miswired one XLR from a convenience panel for audio, and what I ended up with is it was basically canceling when they were summed for the audio, and only when you're watching on a cell phone with one speaker. If you listen to it headphones, it sounds fine. If you listen to it on anything that's stereo, it sounds fine. But if it sums it, all you could hear is noise. And so, but I could tell before that happened. It happened to me in the past. That's why and I immediately could just show them, hey, the polarity's out. The polarity for this channel is out. And they're like, and I could dig into it immediately. I didn't have to listen to it. I didn't have to look at it. I just see it. I just see I never pronounced it right, but the leisure zoom meter is was off to, it was 90 degrees off, and I could immediately see that that I was out of phase, and so I was able to basically get it fixed without listening to it, without going into a show, without anything else, because I knew what that meant. And I can look at, like, when I'm streaming 20 rooms out, I can look over at a monitor with all my scopes, and I can tell you whose volume is working and who's not, and who's got line buzz and who's got all these other things. I don't have to listen to any of that stuff. I mean, I go in and listen to it once I see it, but I feel like that's like flying blind without it. Stuart, and then Chris.
The answer for me with scopes is I've probably got more hours on my Shogun in this environment displaying scopes, and I'm just going to pin Guy's scopes, and Guy is actually in my ear in Discord, reminding me that these are here. So these are what his output is for his scopes for vision, for waveform meter, for skin tones and what have you, and that's sort of essential information that everybody should get used to using.
Right. Every time it goes in, I can't see anybody. Chris, and then Roscoe.
I was wondering, Alex, have you gotten good enough that you can make out the woman in the red dress in a monochrome display? Matrix reference.
Blonde brunette. Go ahead, Roscoe.
Yeah, where can you just go over the points where you're pulling the scope signal from? Pre-show, post-show.
Yeah, I mean, typically I'm. So what we do. Let me see if I can. I was trying to find a photo while you guys were while everyone was talking. Let me see if I can find one that is a safe photo to show. But what we do is we essentially we take a. Let me see if this one. I just want to make sure I don't have any. This is a good one to show, but I can't. Let's see. It's too close.
The problem with too many NDAs. Can I show this?
Yeah. Can I show this one? Let me see if I can. There's. Let's see. Hold on.
We'll talk about subcarrier to carry us along.
So the main thing is that we look at the video and the audio on the way in and on the way out. So we have video scope. We don't do video scopes on the way back out because we've analyzed that. We just want to know what the video looks like on the way in. But for audio scopes, we pay attention to them on the way in and on the way out, and we just feed it into a Mac Mini.
Into what?
Oh,
on the way into the
video
encoder?
Before it gets to the encoder, right? So the same signal that's going to the encoder is routed to a Mac Mini, for us. And then basically you have scope box looking at it on one window. And then I have, for me, Spectre looking at it on another window. Then we have another computer that actually is full screen on a YouTube or Facebook or whatever, but the audio is then also showing on the other end. And the reason we do that is that we often have to adjust for the audio engineer. Audio engineers, when we start talking about going to, we need you to peak at -3 or -6. It's like asking them to jump off a cliff. Like they'll just stare at the cliff and they'll tell you that they're doing it, but they're not doing it. Like we're looking at the scopes. I know that you're not doing it. And it just terrifies broadcast engineers to go that high. So but the number one complaint for an audio stream is that it's too soft. So we know that we have to push it up there. So what we do is we just say, just give it, just don't change it. Do whatever you want to do. Just give us -10, -12, whatever. And then we go into our encoders and just push it up to where we need it to be to go out the other end. But we have to see both sides so we don't start over modulating. And so so we usually oftentimes add as much as 6 dB to the feed on the way through. And so, so anyway, so that's the, I think I might have a.
And are you using the iPhone as your post encoder scope?
No, we're using a Mac Mini looking at the page of where it's at. And then we have it set to go feeding back into Spectre. This is an example of, I think this is a really bad picture, but I'll show it anyway. Hold on. I can't actually share a screen because I'm not a co-host, evidently. So no pressure, Stuart.
I'm on it. Do you want to be host or co-host?
Co-host is great. Yeah.
I'm still getting used to doing this, and it is so much fun to actually explore. There we go. You are now a co-host, sir.
All right. So let me. So let's see. I don't know if I have a better photo, but given that we're going really fast here, what you can see here is so here is our Luma. So this is scope box up here. and this is our Luma and our vector scope. This is the Leisure meter. So as long as this is going straight up and down, we're good, or we'll fall apart. This is our spectrogram and spectrograph, and we can see, this helps us see where the meat is, and also where the any kind of buzz will show up in the spectrograph. And then these are our histogram, of course, of the image. And we do that mostly because engineers in trucks understand this. I mean, like, not engineer, but audio people understand this. If I show in a really small meter, they'll understand. I don't use it otherwise. This is what we really look at, is history, the level history, so that we can kind of see what's going on. So anyway, that's kind of a rough meter that we want to see. But with that level history, I can look across the room and tell you whether a room has gone soft or hot, because we change the colors as it goes through. And we'll but anyway, but meters are super important. Go ahead, Courtney.
How are you getting into the Mac Mini? Are you splitting an HDMI signal and sending the audio and video both in through a capture card?
It's like a mini. Yeah, it's like everything that we do goes into a router. So it's we just have a big router, and so we just route the same signal. It's important to route the same signal, but we route the same signal from the router out to mini converter, typically. I mean, mini recorder that goes into the Mac
So
Mini.
you got a Blackmagic Mini recorder as your capture card in the Mac Mini, and that takes audio and video into your scopes, right?
Because what we want to see is what is the embedded signal, because that embedded signal is the same thing that's going to the encoder. Anyway, next question. We're running out of time.
Yeah, moving on. We've got a bunch of stuff here. Guy Cochran of Seattle is in with, how did Photojoseph and Aaron Parecki's 3 streaming bridge, YouTube Live go?
Go ahead, Roscoe.
Well, the first few pods, they tried to do a pre-show and they left their mics open, and so they got rid of all their sponsors by using some language that wasn't appropriate during the pre-show or while the graphic and the countdown is. That's just, sorry, but you just can't do that. And then secondarily, they had a major outage in the middle of the show. Otherwise, it looked awesome. And the one thing they determined is they can't be a barbershop quartet because that's a Zoom of delay. But otherwise, what they were showing, and they were using a super source. So they were running 4 ATEM minis and then through a production 4K so that they could do the super source. So it was very interesting. It was things you can't do with ATEM minis, but at the end of the day, it just looked awesome. And there it is.
Yeah, I felt like the latency was pretty high. I mean, they were kind of talking over it, but I could tell that they were pretty, there was a lot of latency there. It wasn't Zoom latency. There was definitely more of a gap between when they were going back and forth. I mean, I have to admit that show, I jumped into it for a couple minutes, and I can say that it sold me on the fact that I'm never going to use it for a show. That's all it showed. Like, I was like, I'm never going to do that again. Aaron was breaking up a little bit. I know that he just had some connection issues. But it was kind of like, I could feel the latency, but I'm really sensitive. Like, I can feel the latency between, Skype and Zoom. So, but definitely latency was higher than Zoom. And I feel like that's, from a conversational perspective, is problematic. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, I think the problem is they described it, the latency, really, they were monitoring on Zoom. So Zoom was only being used as a back channel monitor, and all of their signals were going from the ATEM Minis straightly into the Stream Decks and then into a Constellation or a ATEM 2. So I think their monitoring put them behind, and that's where the latency got them. If they could get a back channel where they could hear each other with low latency, that would solve that problem rather than Zoom.
Yeah, you could do something like that. In fact, I mean, I've been on my list of things to experiment with is to build just an audio backbone, because you can get the audio down with a variety of things down to 10 milliseconds or 20 milliseconds, and have people just not watching each other at all or letting themselves be out of sync, and then just talk over those things with high latency is, I think, that the solution for some of these is you just have to train people to do it, that they're not using the video embedded, and then we can get down to really good conversations. Go ahead, Roscoe.
They weren't talking through the Stream Deck or through the streaming bridges. They were actually talking through Zoom, and the streaming bridges were just pulling all the signals into one place so that they could be switched. But the actual back and forth was being done through Zoom.
It really felt slow when I watched it. So I don't know. There's symptoms that you see of people talking over each other and people talking, like, I don't know what happened there, but it felt like a slow connection to me. When I watched it. So, I mean, I could be wrong, but it just, go ahead, Jeffrey.
Well, yeah, because you're going through one system to do the conversation, but you can't monitor what the other system is doing. So if the other system is latent in any factor, then you can't correct yourself for that. So that makes sense. Plus the streaming bridge, this is not what the streaming bridge was originally made for. It's just made for bringing at least one signal in at the highest quality to a person that's doing some sort of interview, not live, but recorded.
Aaron's breakup is exactly what I was worried about with using the Stream Deck. I mean, using the thing is that it started breaking up. That's what you don't tend to see very much of with SRT and Zixi, and why I was kind of bummed when I saw that they weren't going to use a real protocol for backhaul transport. Roscoe,
he went down from my 5 megabits, and he didn't have that problem once he went down.
I understand that, but Zixi and SRT will do that automatically. You know, like they'll do it on the fly and tie it all back together, and that's the thing that I just think that, again, it's new for Blackmagic. They'll figure it out. Next question.
Patrick Shonis of Little Rock, Arkansas says, looking at pushing a virtual event main program into Zoom breakout rooms, looking for creative and cost-effective ways to ingest into approximately 20 breakout rooms at a time. What suggestions do you have for someone that doesn't have an Alex size budget?
Jeff. That's what I would suggest. Go ahead, Jeff.
We're doing 10 in about, I don't know, 4 to 5 hours. It's all done in the cloud. It's become easy, honestly. And once you run out enough machines in the cloud, which we've did earlier December, 150 at one time. Once you're running that many machines and you have the infrastructure down, it's so easy to scale. So if your end client needs breakout capabilities, which is what comes with meetings, and you need to have multiple meetings, then a cloud infrastructure is just.
And
so
what are you
easy
using to
do.
feed the video out to all 20 rooms or 100 rooms or whatever?
Not Blackmagic adapters. I have to use NDI.
You know, I understand that, but are you using, or what are you? How are you feeding them?
NDI with a virtual camera input. What used to be virtual camera, now it's called webcam input. So it's on each one of the machines.
Right.
So the NDI tools, which is an actual free download, it does make a difference when you set up the machines and make sure they have the right configurations and the right hardware and the right drivers and that kind of thing. But once we have the template down, it's very easy to do.
It's cut and paste after the first one, right? I mean, you get the first couple working, and then it's
after the first 14 versions of it. Yes.
Yeah. No, I'm saying, but once you get it to one, you're just putting them in.
Pretty much, and then Zoom updates. And then you have to start all over again, or NDI tools updates, and you either update all 150 machines or 100 machines as we were running, or you build another AMI and then you start duplicating from there. But you don't have to worry about the hardware. You don't have to worry about the tie-ins. You don't have to worry about the network. It just becomes very simple.
And by the way, for multiple rooms like that, I'm 100% behind NDI and 100% behind doing it in the cloud. There's no other way to do it. Like I do it something with the specific speakers, I might still do it the way I do it, but for once you distribute it, you want to do it in the cloud. And
for sure,
I mean, like someone asked me, like, how are you going to do this thing? I was bidding on one with 75 rooms. I'm like, I'm just going to call Jeff. I'm not going to do it. Anyway, so next question.
Lauren W. of Louisville, I'm assuming Kentucky. Our nonprofit group would like to package up our seminar video and audio files on inexpensive Android tablets using a simple DVD-like menu. Does anybody know if there's an off-the-shelf way to do this? Could HTML be used to accomplish it? If not, and are there any recommendations on good, cheap tablets?
For good cheap tablets, I'm a fan of the Samsungs. They make, I don't remember what the cost is, but it's like $120, and we bought a bunch of them as controllers actually for our, but they seem to work relatively well. As far as packaging up the seminar videos, I mean, there are places that do that. I mean, there's services. We're gonna have to move pretty quickly though, Chris.
We did this a couple of years ago for our retail client, and they found a service. I can't remember what it was. I got to tell you, the quality of the device, it was actually built into like a book. The quality of the device that played the stuff back was awful, and all the video content we made for it looked dreadful. It was really disappointing.
We're going to go 5 more minutes, and then we'll switch over. Let's go to the next question.
Hasmuk from Cape Town, our friend, says, for Andy Carluccio's session this weekend, what prep work could I possibly invest in as a complete dunce in this space of OSC?
No prep due for this Saturday. And then after that, Andy will have videos for you to watch to prep. So it's an introduction to it. There's nothing you have to do. Andy's gonna, walk us through it and how it works and get our heads off the space. I do highly recommend coming on Saturday for it, and it will be. And I didn't put it in the agenda because I needed to work out some things, but it should be at 9 o'clock. 9 o'clock on be right after the education hour. We'll be doing Zoom OSC, and I'll make sure to get that into the agenda for tomorrow to make sure people know about it. Next question.
Ken Jones in Seattle says, talk about sources and methods for managing other people's network access, the shared network where you take the largest portion of the bandwidth.
I mean, what I typically want to do is you ask. Now, if you're working in a large area where you couldn't get a hold of it, you're never going to get that. You're going to work with IT. IT is going to give you what they've decided to give you if it's a big facility. If it's a small facility like a cafe or a location or an event group or whatever, a location, and they don't have an IT department, then I'm usually asking for, can I put a QoS box, some kind of box at the WAN? So I want to get the internet into my box. Then I'll hand you off what you need for the house to operate, and then I build out all the VLAN and everything else. So we build that out and control it. And again, what we oftentimes do if the bandwidth is too low is that we'll create some bonded cellular connections, and we give the house back cellular, and we use the house, and sometimes the cellular as well. But if someone doesn't have someone dedicated that knows what they're doing, typically they're pretty open to letting you do whatever they're gonna do because they don't really understand it. Like you're going to a bar or a cafe or something like that, they're like, oh yeah, sure, and so because they don't know. And the key is to make sure that they get good service, or they'll complain and they won't have you back. So you do have to figure out a way to take care of their needs as well. Go ahead, Stuart, real quick, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, I just had the internet crash out for a second, so I'm not sure if that affected us, and I hope everybody's seeing everything clearly at the moment.
I'm seeing everything. All right, next question.
Moving to Matt Cool of Montreal's question, has anyone used Session Wire for remote recording? It looks like the holy grail for remote audio recording, but wondering if anybody has tried it. And he has a link.
Is it just audio or is it audio and video?
It's just audio. There is a video return, but it's for, doing either like a singer that's going to sing on a track or a voiceover, something like that. It looks pretty cool.
Yeah, we'll take a look at it. I mean, the big one, of course, is Studio Connect, and then the other one is Unity Connect, and then so it'd be just a matter of connecting, or comparing those ones to it. Go ahead, Jeffrey, real quick, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, a couple of years ago, I was at NAMM. I got to see this. So we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. It's mostly for a session musician to actually get work from remote places rather than doing any type of jamming or anything like that. Although they have apparently added a feature for some loose end jamming off of that. So it's a pretty good solution for if you want to have somebody record a stem for you.
Next question.
Christian Ortiz of South Florida says, in Mukana, can we reply to a question once it's been accepted and put in the chat? I wanted to put in a reply directly to the question and was not able to.
I'll talk to Chris about that. I don't see any reason why we couldn't put the threads into that and let them continue to run. So we'll work on that. Make sure to put it into the Mukana suggestions in Discord, or it's just hard to track. Go ahead, Roscoe, really fast.
If you just click on the person's name, you can reply directly to whoever asked the question.
Right. Yeah. But if you want to have it, it's nice. We're hoping to use those replies more in the future. So it would be helpful to have that there. Next question.
Comes from David Liu. How would the panelists design a hybrid virtual classroom with students attending the class physically and displaying student dialing displaying students dialing in on a video wall? Sorry about that.
Go ahead, Roscoe.
I would show up on Saturday and learn Zoom OSC. There are some tools in there that are going to be in every classroom if Zoom doesn't put them in themselves.
And we talk about education solutions every Saturday, between 8 and 9, and sometimes it leaks out, but we're going to go just 8 to 9 this Saturday because the next couple, because we're going to do Zoom OSC, but I would definitely check that out. It's probably going to be a key piece of that. I think we have one more or two more questions we're just going to just burn through real fast. Go ahead.
Yeah, Matt Cool says, update. A while ago, I asked about what size UPS to get for my vMix studio setup with 4 monitors, modem, and so forth. I received and tested a CyberPower 1500 VA, and I'm getting 45 minutes of power. And he's just saying, thanks for the suggestion. And then there was a goofy one that was for me. And it was being silly because it was about the turbo encabulator. And I'll tell you, it depends on whether you have version 1, 2, or 3C.
Okay, great. All right, let's jump into it. So now we're going to jump into the Stream Deck conversation, and I know that we Jeffrey has done a lot, and we were talking about it, and he graciously offered to talk through it a little bit. I know a lot of people here are using it, but I'd like to jump to Jeffrey first and have you kind of give us kind of the lay of the land of how it works, and for those who aren't used to Stream Decks, what it does.
Okay. Thanks. Stream Deck, I found Stream Deck back in 2018, and when I was looking for a solution to actually do some switching for my video, as Alex is modeling that said Stream Deck. And
it's doing nothing right now. It's got the little hello.
It's got a middle button.
Yeah, there we go.
And of course, I was looking at a thing called X keys, and when I ran into Stream Deck, I actually interviewed Elgato like 2 years prior about some lights, which was really interesting. But anyway, Stream Deck came out in 2017. It was meant to go into their infrastructure. So if you had an Elgato streaming card and their streaming software, you could actually come in here and use the Stream Deck to do things like switch scenes or do recordings or anything like that. Stream Deck then opened up their SDK, and that's when everything kind of exploded from there. Lots of people coming in and saying, hey, what if I could do this? What if I could do this? What if I could do this? And it just kind of went past the infrastructure to do a lot of different things. There's a lot of things you can do with Stream Deck. And of course, if you don't find it and you know your programming, you could actually make it happen. You can also make things happen through things like IFTTT or Zapier or anything like that. Just by setting up commands from there. I have 2 Stream Decks. There's technically 3, but there's also 2 virtual Stream Decks. The 3 are the 15 key, which is the original one, the 32 key, which is called the XL, and then the 6 key, which is called the Mini. And then there's 2 virtual, one that's made by Stream Deck, which is a monthly fee. Stuart's popping that up there. And then another one, which you could, once again, it invokes that SDK. A company called BitFocus makes a thing called Companion. And I don't think that there's any communication between the two or anything like that. But Companion, you can also do a virtual Stream Deck mostly for testing out your buttons in Companion, but more for just using it as a Stream Deck if you wanted to. So I have my 2 Stream Decks here. Quickly go over the 2. I have the 15 key and the 32 key. Both of them are working on the same computer. You can set them up on the same computer, or there are ways to actually use other computers. Like, for instance, people have hooked these up to Raspberry Pis and used them to control any different things. I'm going to start with the 32 button here. On the right side, these are all my switches. So whenever I go from this scene to this scene to the screen and all that stuff, that is going through these. These are right on the computer here. I do have a zoom mute right here, which works really well. And then, of course, a whole bunch of other buttons. I have my companion buttons over on the left side, mostly because when it first came out, the XL came out, you could only use the 15 key companion. So I set it up this way, but a lot of people have been changing these around, especially these page up, page down buttons, because now you can move them over to the other side if you want to. I have all my graphics, which are from another computer, and I use a program called Viscero, which does hotkey management on the other computer. I have my PTZ camera with the different scenes, and of course, if I want to change, go up or go down or anything like that, I have that. And then, of course, I have my ATEM Mini on another page that can completely control it. Going over to the 15 key one here, I have a lot of different programs that if I open up on a regular basis, including Mukana and Reaper and all the Adobe products and Wirecast and vMix. I'm running on Wirecast right now, by the way. And then, of course, the ability to do folders. With a 15-key Stream Deck, if you add folders, they say you can do 122 different buttons through the whole folder system. So I have that set up right there. So that's basically the crux of what you can do with Stream Deck, and it's just amazing, and it's gained through the revisions a lot more stability throughout there. I do have to admit, my XL, within 2 weeks I got the XL, it died, and I went back and I said, hey, it died. They saw the serial number, they said send it back, we'll send you another one. I had it within a week. So that's support was pretty decent. That's what really got me over the moon with Stream Deck.
And I moved to Stream Deck from X Keys, so I was using X Keys for a lot of stuff, and it is just a lot easier. X Keys is still more extensible with what's built into it, but you can do everything you can do with X Keys with external apps. It's just that X Keys was kind of built for it, and X Keys was kind of cool because I have closures. I can just have a closure box that says I can just push something to anything. You get a closure, or you get something from Arduino or something, and it'll just automatically do whatever it's supposed to do. So there's things that we could build into hardware that distinguishes X Keys from Stream Deck. But
plus they have jog wheels and joysticks. You can do a lot of customization. Yeah.
That said, it's so easy to set things up in Stream Deck that it was really hard to not make that the core app. Go ahead, Schy.
I'm finding that I'm running out of USB. Can I use a USB bridge to put these different connectors into? I thought I would need to have it as directly connected to the computer as possible, but can I throw it in a chain?
A powered hub. Use a powered hub.
That's the answer. Thank you.
The big thing is Stream Deck does not do well on USB 2. You want to make sure that you want to be on at least 3 with your Stream Deck, especially if you're bridging it with other devices. But I've used it on my MacBook Pro in a hub, and I've had no problems with it.
Go ahead, Courtney.
One question is, does it require Companion to work with a variety of different software, and how does it appear to the computer? Is it just a virtual keyboard? In other words, it come in through the HID device or the interface device as a keyboard, and it just communicates keyboard commands to the computer, or how does it work technically?
The Stream Deck itself, you think of it like a hotkey manager. It was originally, like I said, it was originally for their infrastructure, but also for the fact of, those annoying graphics that come on and say busted or whatnot. They wanted you to create those types of things for your Twitch streams. Companion is not needed, but it adds a whole new level of use. Like I said, with the graphics that I have on the different machine, I couldn't run that through Stream Deck natively. I have to use Companion to use the Viscero to send the hotkey over to the other computer.
And is Companion a paid subscription?
No,
Purchase once free? What is it?
Companion is absolutely free. It's and I got it right here. Let's do that. So Companion is absolutely free. You can download it and install it on Mac and PC, and it works. It works on the computer itself. It doesn't send anything to a server, which is another thing that I like about it.
So it communicates directly with the Stream Deck and downloads the images.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Good. Jeff, and then Beju. And then
one. Yeah, there is another software definitely we need to look into. If you're starting it in the Stream Decks and you have the certain hardware that you're trying to control, like anything in the Blackmagic land or TriCasters in my land or VisVector, that software is Central Control by Joe DeMax, and he supports Stream Deck, and it is now, I've been using Companion for a long time, but it's amazing what he's done with some of the video previews and stuff. Like you could have and that's what I like about it. I also have been in X Keys for years, decades probably. Right. But I moved to it just because it's so, like Alex said, it's so easy to program to make changes in a show flow if you're in the middle of it. The one thing I do miss is it's not a non-volatile memory. So with X Keys, you could program an X key, because an X key, Courtney, is an HID device. So anything you put in an X key, you plug it to any computer, it's gonna work if you're set in a hardware profile. Where with Stream Deck, you have to have their software or a software running that it connects to.
And the Central Control, how does it compare to Companion?
It doesn't have as wide a destination hardware for you to control, but it has the important ones. but the capability that he's putting in there is wider than Companion. Companion actually was, and like I said, I've used it for years. Companion was for show control. That's where it was originally targeted. It was guys doing theater shows. Triggering QLab, for instance, was one of the big things. OSC was a huge thing out of it. But there is definitely more capable stuff coming in central control for what I've seen, and it's just really neat.
That's cool.
And it's $50, by the way, so it's not going to break you by any means.
Beju and then Chris.
Courtney, as Jeff mentioned, it's basically really aimed at professionals, so you can find supports and modules for most major show devices like media servers, matrices, audio controllers, etc. in Companion. And the other big thing is it converts a USB device into an IP control device. So once it's connected to Companion, you can control anything on your local network. You can just point it to the IP, and that device,
WAN.
if it's listening you can connect to the WAN as well. But let's leave it to the LAN for now, Jeff. Everybody doesn't. You need to teach them how to use a VPN first, then. But yeah, Courtney, it's definitely useful. And the other big thing, which some people still get confused about, is that originally you could not run Stream Deck software and Companion at the same time. But since version 2.0 of Companion, you can actually use both at the same time, and you can also use it with the Stream Deck software apps on the phones as well, which you could not do it earlier as well. So you can actually use Companion buttons through the iPhone, and it does work pretty well. I have it set up that way, and it works really nicely. I have my folders set up on my iPhone, and it's a nice way to use an old iPhone as a controller if you don't have enough Stream Decks.
Go ahead, Chris.
I was talking with Schy recently, and we were trying to, learn some more Stream Deck stuff. And it dawned on me as I was explaining my very rudimentary knowledge of it to him, is that there's basically three things that you can do, three types of things that you can do. You can trigger a shortcut, and anybody should be able to figure out how to do that. Slightly more advanced is when you use the Stream Deck, I think they're called actions, Jeffrey, yeah? Where and different companies will like post like these things will help the Stream Deck talk to our thing. Zoom is one of them. And then when you get really deep, you get into the Companion, or much of what I do with my Stream Deck, I learned from Phil, and Phil taught me Keyboard Maestro. It taught me like 1% of Keyboard Maestro to allow it to do things a bit more advanced. Jeffrey, I was going to ask, are you using the Zoom action on your to mute your Zoom mic?
I am. It was actually on GitHub. It was on GitHub, and somebody talked about it about 2 months and a half ago on here. So I'm not exactly sure. Let me see if I can find it really quick. But the biggest thing about this, about using this button, is it wasn't a hotkey. It was a direct key. So it didn't matter what app I was in. If I hit that mute button, it always went to Zoom.
Now, again, we talked about this the other day. You can set your Zoom keyboard shortcut to work globally. So the Zoom app doesn't have to be front and center. But I recently found that Zoom had actions. And by using the Zoom actions, there's actually a toggle state where the button will change pictures, which I really enjoyed. I love the fact that you can put your own icons on the thing. So I like stole all the artwork from the Zoom UI and made one with the little slash in it. I'd be willing to share those.
Yeah,
I put the Zoom plugin in Mukana that I'm using.
And being able to throw the images on is a big thing, has been useful for me. When you're glancing down and trying to remember what's there, having something you design that tells you what it is, whether it's red or green or different.
Trish freaked out because she walked in and she saw my face, because that's this camera.
Right.
And she goes, "Did you take a picture of yourself and put it underneath that?" Like, no, it's like a little TV. And she's like, "What?"
Yeah. All right, next question. All right, let's jump into the questions, Bill. We've got a couple of them stacking up here.
Yeah, the first one comes from Frank Haney of Ottawa, who asks, "Can we share Stream Deck profiles in Discord?"
Do we have a Stream Deck section?
Yes, we do.
Yeah. So yes.
In fact, when I set up this I asked people to go into Discord and just show me. I think there's like 2 or 3 people that took pictures and showed their Stream Decks.
Please do. We'd love to see them. Next question.
Matt Cool of Montreal, second hour. Has anyone had issues with Stream Deck buttons, either not firing or double firing?
Yes.
Early on, especially the XL. The XL came with a small defect. Once again, that's why I had to return mine, was because the buttons stopped working properly. But once again, within a week, I had the next XL, and I've used that ever since.
I have to admit that I've had it recently enough that it's always the one thing that worries me a little bit about Stream Decks is I feel like it's not the Stream Deck's fault necessarily, just the infrastructure that it sits inside of, that I don't always get the firing the way I would expect it. Roscoe?
What about using the software version on the iPhone and iPad?
I haven't used that yet. Chris says
yeah,
no.
I haven't used that either.
I mean, the nicest thing about the Stream Deck is that it's tactile. Like, I don't want to have my finger floating around on a piece of glass and maybe pushing the wrong thing.
I will say I like the idea of the ability to expand to the iPhone. I love the physical version of it. I haven't done it because I haven't run out of keys yet, but because I tend to be not, as someone who's presenting and running, I tend not to want too many keys.
But yours isn't even programmed, Alex. Of course you haven't run.
That's because I just moved it to a new computer. It's on the new computer. It hasn't been updated. It's part of the presentation computer that just got put in, and I haven't turned it on yet. Go ahead, Beju.
Yeah, I'm using, I don't have a physical Stream Deck in front of me right now, so I am using the app version. It does work pretty well. It's pretty stable, and it works on most recent iPhones. So it can be a 4-year, 5-year-old iPhone. So if you have something plugged in and sitting around, you can use it. Right. It is limited to the 15 key. You can't put more than 15 keys on it, as far as I can see. And it's an iPhone app. I don't think they have a native iPad app, but it does work. The nice thing is it's easy to transfer profiles, and it's a subscription isn't too expensive, and you can use it with multiple devices. So it's a nice way to just get something, especially if you need to use it mobile. And it works on Wi-Fi, so you don't have to worry about like one limitation with the physical Stream Deck. It has to be connected via USB, or you have to use some software to forward the signals over the network. Right. This way, if you're using it on any machine on the network, it talks straight over Wi-Fi, and it works pretty well.
Hey, Beju, can it do a folder? Just like I said with the 15 button Stream Deck, you can create all folders and have up to 122 buttons.
Yep, it does. I'm just switching to it right now. You can see it. I have my folders set up. If you can see that, I have it set up for mics as well. I have it set up for Vmix. I can get all the feedback, and I'm using it with the companion plugin. So I'm getting the companion feedback back into it as well. So I'm getting feedback from the ATEM Mini. I'm getting feedback from Vmix. And you can basically use the native commands or that. It's basically like a physical Stream Deck. You just need to use a Stream Deck utility to configure it. It does everything that it can do.
Is there any tool that basically updates keys based on video, like grabs a video feed and doesn't have to be video, but just
Control
like still.
does. The Central Control actually does that. Yeah. So I can see what's in the DDR exactly as it's playing, countdowns, things. It's just it was life.
And is it video, or how often does it update the key?
It's a low frame rate, like 5 frames. Yeah, I think it's the top of. I have to look at mine real quick, but I think it's 5 frames per second.
No, but still.
Yeah, when I started Vmix a couple weeks ago, I was very impressed with the fact they only do the first 2 scenes as live key scenes, but then everything else is static. But it was impressive to actually see that the live keys happening.
So it's 15 frames per second, which is not bad.
And if you put it on an iPad, it's just bigger pictures.
I actually never ran mine on iPad. Is that right, Beju? Does it expand out, or does it do this?
I think it does the window, because the iPad I have handy with me doesn't support it. It's an older version of iOS. I've mainly been using it on the 6S and the 7 Plus. I'll test it on borrow an iPad Pro to test it. The other thing is, like, if you have an iPad, you can probably use the companion web GUI, and that works nicer. Then you can have 32 buttons basically. And I believe, who was it? I think the post show showed up a really nice setup for. Can you remember? Basically, Studio. I think I forgot. I need to remember it.
Next question.
Gavin Gratian, and I hope I'm getting that right, from Manchester, UK, says, I've used the 15-button Stream Deck with both OBS and my ATEM switchers on the road for the last few years. The ATEM Advanced Control Panel and Schy panels look very tempting as the next step. Are hardware panels worth it, or should I just go for a Stream Deck XL instead?
Go ahead, Jeff.
Right tool, right job. And depends on your budget. that too.
I mean, you can get away. You can get like I'm about to. I have. I was showing it earlier, but I'm slowly putting together this tiny little 2ME with two ATEM minis, where I have two of them tied to each other. One's feeding in the other one, so I have more inputs and everything else. I'm trying to do it as cheaply and still hardware as possible. But what I'm tying it together with is I'm going to be using a Stream Deck to kind of cut, because all they're doing is basically cutting. And so I'll have a Stream Deck that will cut. And what I'm working on is the ability to have it say, okay, when I cut to my second ME, so to speak, or my interfaces, I want the first switcher to switch to the input from that, so that it just automatically, if I want that input, it automatically does what it needs to do that. And theoretically, I know this will sound absurd, but I am playing with the idea of having like a 4ME switcher built out of these little minis, not because I need it, just because I can, so that all the inputs that are going into the main switcher are coming from other little switchers. But the key to make that work is Stream Deck, because I can't it'll turn into a chaos if I try to do it with the actual switchers. Whereas I can basically clean that interface up, and now I would have essentially 12 inputs that are going into it. I know that sounds very convoluted, but it will be useful. Anyway, it's the smallest little hardware switcher system that you can put into a back that only costs a little bit of money. Anyway, Matt, and then we'll go on to the next question.
So when I was having sticky button issues with my Stream Deck, I was looking for something a little more robust as a switcher for vMix. And I pulled out my old LC11 panel from my old TriCaster, and I was like, there's got to be a way to make these two things talk to each other. And then I stumbled upon Central Control, which allows you to use your LC11 to control vMix, and it just changed my life, because now I've got a real buttons, and that's probably the only good thing I'll have to say about the new tech stuff. Sorry, Jeff, I know you're a big fan, but I had nothing but issues with my TriCasters. So,
all right, next question.
It's okay. You're the only one. It's all right.
Moving to Rob Collins of Kansas City, who says, what's your favorite macro you've set up on your Stream Deck that you don't think is very common?
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
So one macro I've set up on my Stream Deck, when I use Wirecast, you have all these master layers. And one macro I set up is an all on, all off button. So I can actually set it up so I can turn everything off or turn it to a countdown screen or something like that. And then when I hit the all on button, it'll flip to every scene in each master layer, putting all the graphics and everything back into there. So that's one way. Another way is to do any type of switching of lights and of course, I also control graphics from another computer. And I love it that way with the macros.
Go Jeff, and then Schy.
And I don't have a zoom button on mine, unfortunately. I'm in the profile for live. With Central Control, I engaged Joe there, and we wrote a module for that big zoom that we were doing with 150 rooms. He helped me write a custom module that we could talk to the Vicrio, which is that little receiver program, and it's on all of ours. With one button, we could mute all 150 zooms.
That's great.
That was life changing. Very much. Yeah. Very much.
I love how you call it Vicrio. I call it Visceral, but you call it Vicrio. So I don't know what the correct
I don't actually know what it's called.
What does that do? What does the app do?
It's a receiver. So it just the code sends to it, and then it repeats a keyboard shortcut, or usually it's always keyboard shortcuts, isn't it, Jeffrey?
Yeah, it opens up port 10,001 or something like that, and then it just listens for a hotkey to come through Companion or through Central Control. Now I need to look at that one so you can control your other computer.
And that computer can be anywhere, obviously. It's just, and do they pair, or do they know IPs? How does it?
Well, we had to host the actual Central Control. We had to host in our VPC in our cloud, and so it's within that local LAN. But the button was actually here in Texas, and then I was talking to Virginia, pressing that computer's button, which was in turn shoving out 150 commands of "shut up, everybody."
Yeah, awesome. And I think with Companion, you'd have to do some sort of VPN, but when you set it up in Companion, you give an IP address to the computer it's going to go to.
Schy?
I'm using the Stream Deck now, pushing the button to say mute and unmute. Now, the question I have, Jeffrey, you showed that changing the panels because I'm currently going in to the little menu at the top of my thing and saying default profile, different profile. Could you, at some point, I'd love to learn how you do that with a button, those arrows up, arrows down. If
you mean actually create the folder itself?
Is that what it's called? See, I'm still learning the nomenclature.
Yeah, you're creating the button. Let me pull this up really quick.
I mean,
there it is. So anyway, so basically to create a button, I have a folder button. What they used to do, the first iterations of Stream Deck, you basically just took an item and brought it over a second time, and it would create a folder. In this case, you have to right click, and I'll just delete this one. And you right click on it and you say create folder, and then it creates the folder, and then I've got 32 new keys to work with. Does that make sense? Is that what you're asking?
Well, and then the up and down arrow, getting from one profile to the, are you going from folder to folder? Or are you going from profile to profile?
I think he's asking about companion, Jeffrey.
Yeah, that's a companion thing. You'll see those buttons in companion when you start bringing over companion buttons.
You're up and down in the upper left-hand corner.
Yep, that's companion.
Companion. Thank you. Stepping away.
Next question.
Moving on to Keith Lewis, who asks, what's the best way for a novice to learn the nuances of Stream Deck?
Play with it. I mean, the thing to do, the very first thing to do is I wouldn't get anything smaller than that middle, the original one, the 12 or the whatever 15 key one. I wouldn't get anything smaller than that. I have the smaller one and I love it. I use it for when I do my teardowns, which are coming soon because the new setup's almost all done. But when I do the teardowns, I use that little one because I only need play and I only need a handful of things and I don't want to fat finger or something. So I just have that little one for play out. So I love that little one. The XL is my next purchase. I don't have them. I've got a couple of the 15 key, and the 15 key is the one I would get. And then I just play with it. You start adding things to it and your mind starts to go, oh, I could do this and I could do this. And then you have conversations like this where we all talk about what we're doing. And you start realizing how big it can get. It's a really powerful piece of hardware. Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, I said 15 keys doing 122 functions, but the reality is you can also set it up by what program you open up. So if I open up vMix, that Stream Deck switches to a vMix panel. I can also switch it out as I go. So 122 key buttons becomes a whole lot more.
Yep. Next question.
Rob Collins of Kansas City is in with, does anyone know how to get a Stream Deck to control lighting, specifically controlling PC, RGB, and background smart lights?
Go ahead, Jeff.
That was so easy. I had so much fun. This is my first big thing when I found Companion and I had a Stream Deck. I bought a Stream Deck immediately as soon as it came out because I saw the potential in it. So we were doing something for football here and we were doing an opening for them. So we had our LED boards out in front of the big bear that we had for my son's school. And then we were firing the LEDs off of QLab. So I was firing the video playback off of QLab. At the same time, we had CO2 cannons and lighting effects off the backside of it. That was all OSC to DMX. And so we were running anything that could be DMX at that point. Yeah, it was very Texas. I'm sorry. But
nothing like was... Texas high school football. Good
high school. That was his grade school.
Yeah. So, but it was just like, I was like, whenever I finally got it all put together and we were doing the testing, it was like, I have one button. Oh, and of course a big air horn. So I had a button for the air horn. I had two different DMX buttons for the actual lighting effects, and then I had two other DMX buttons where I could just basically play the effects as I was.
And sorry, was this grade school, middle school, high school?
No, this was high school. We went to state that year, so we took it to state. I'd love to play that video for you sometime. It was a ball. It was a lot of fun.
That's awesome. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
The only thing that I would add to that, because I don't use it the way Jeff uses it, I wish I did, but I've tried it through IFTTT to control certain lights that don't connect up in that way. It does do Philip Hue lights naturally because they did write a program for it, but I've tried IFTTT to control my lights. You find delays that happen in that, so that might not be the best use for it.
Next question.
Tim Holman, San Lorenzo says, so I have the money for the largest Stream Deck, but do I need it? I think you can have pages on the smaller ones. I'm currently playing around with an ATEM Mini and use OBS and or vMix. Is the Stream Deck something that keeps getting filled up more and more like other technology?
Hey, go ahead, Stuart.
It's like every other piece of technology out there. If you think you need it, you probably do need it already. Just budget for it.
If you have the budget for the largest one, it's like a bag. You'll just fill it up. Whatever number of keys you have, you'll just keep on adding things to it. So if you get the small one, you'll just figure out how to use 6 keys and pages, and the 15 one. But if you get a big one, it's just going to be like, just going to keep on adding stuff to it. And it's again, I'm on my way to getting one. Jeffrey and then Chris.
Yeah, you talk about the ATEM Mini and OB. You talk about 2 programs, but 2 programs, all of a sudden you're opening up your editing programs, and you got all the hotkeys, the copies, the pastes, the cut. You don't even need to remember the keyboard shortcuts anymore. You'll just be able to use the Stream Deck to move the playhead forward, do the cuts, do the edits, and go out from there.
Yeah. Go ahead. Chris Fenwick, and then John.
Semi-side question. Jeffrey, you said you're controlling your ATEM Mini. Are you controlling it through the ATEM software that's also running on your computer? Or is there a action, or is it a companion thing to control the ATEM Mini?
I don't have to open up that software at all. I just opened up the Stream Deck and hit buttons.
Okay. Another
Because that's the
discussion
direction.
another day.
So, and by the way,
one more quick thing about that is that it doesn't do full control. So like you have to set up certain things. You won't be able to change the picture-in-picture or anything like that. You'll need the app for things like that. But once you have it all set up that way, you'll be able to use it.
And only because someone hasn't written for it. I mean, this is the one big advantage, and why Blackmagic is in certain spaces just cleaning up, is because of the API, because that anybody can write anything to anywhere. And that open API from a hardware perspective has just been incredible, of the kind of things that we've been able to do that we just can't. Like, we build Arduino controllers that talk directly to the switchers, and you can, you have weird things that it can do related to it. And it's very powerful. Go ahead, John Edelson. Did you have your hand up?
Well, just back to the 15 key versus the 22, that I like to build on the larger one. The cable routing is better, and it's just, so I have 2 of the 15 key, but whenever I can get to the big one, that's when I like the best.
Yeah, Beiju.
Yeah, just clarifying one point for Chris, that you don't need the ATEM software running to control Blackmagic ATEM, but you do need Companion, because that translates the Stream Deck buttons into specific commands. And one thing that, as Alex mentioned, for building the 2ME or the 4ME with physical, the nice thing with the Companion modules is you can have multiple commands triggered by one button for different softwares, different things. You can set delays and stuff. So you can do really, really complex scripting in an easy visual, easy to see way. So you can do really interesting things with it.
We used it. We had a bunch of events in the like 30 or 40 events in the fall that we had to do, that we used. And the mixture of Stream Deck and QLab and the ATEM were, incredible. Like, it's just, what we could, the complexity that one person could run was stunning. like that's all. As someone who, as many people know, will throw hardware and people at everything. The fact that we had one person doing the play out and the multi, in super sources and all this other stuff, and there's one person just kind of sitting there, it's incredible. Next question
comes from Nick Pavlinik. And Nick, thank you so much for the pronunciation guide in Southeast Michigan. Says, looking to get a Stream Deck XL. Any suggestions on where to buy and what's the best price anyone's seen? Not in a hurry, looking for the best price.
Best price is usually during Black Friday, but that's probably going to be a little bit longer than you want to wait. I would just keep an eye on all the areas, and even check used. Although it would probably be a product you probably don't want to buy used unless you really trust the seller. But yeah, just keep an eye out. Amazon, if there's another Prime Day coming up soon or something like that, or B&H or anything.
Stuart.
Is this the point in the show where we plug Jason and Guy for their customer service?
Customer service is more important. So yeah,
so they'd be able to sell it to us, wouldn't they?
Yeah. So what's the price on the XL, Guy?
Well,
I actually don't carry those. I'd love to, but
I just noticed
I'm just a user
on their website.
So how do you not carry them?
During the pandemic is just too much of a pain, and some manufacturers, they just can't. allocating them to different people. It's kind of a long story, but unless you're a big guy, you're not going to get them.
Oh, interesting.
It's a very consumer oriented to start with. Their whole sales process, their whole funnel is all about consumer. The whole Elgato stuff is, so I think that's the biggest part.
I had a conversation where I was trying to figure out, trying to specify for a green screen, and I was going to speak at Justine's event, and I pinged Elgato for, can you send me a screen so that I can show it at my talk, and I'm going to show it on a couple other things. And I wasn't big enough. They were like, no, you don't have the stats for it. I was like, okay. so but we would have bought 100 of them if we had tested one. I just needed to see if that one would work. I'm glad I didn't, because I in the end I wouldn't have, because 5 feet isn't wide enough. Jeffrey.
Prices right now, looks like the 15 button's about 150. It looks like the 32 button is not in stock, which means that you're going to be going to third-party sellers, and they're going to be selling it for big numbers. And then I think the 6 key is usually about $80.
Right. Next question.
Moving on to Ed Willick of Valley Cottage, New York. And Ed says, Jeffrey, in your case, your use case, you're running the Stream Deck app with a companion plugin. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Okay, and I guess we're moving on.
Next question.
To Marty Adius of Silver Spring, Maryland. What does the Stream Deck programming interface look like, and how does it work?
I don't know if a lot of us are programming for the Stream Deck as much as using things like Companion and Central Control and the Stream Deck software. Is anyone programming directly to the Stream Deck?
I tried to do a little bit of research. They do have a page about the SDK and how you can do a little bit of programming. I didn't see any place you could download it. So I have a feeling that's something you have to request to get the SDK.
Go ahead, Jeff.
I think you guys went too far with the programming side. I think he's asking about the assignment. So Jeffrey, why don't you show the actual software to assign buttons and stuff? Okay. I think we'd look at it at a higher level.
Yep. I mean, it's so easy. Like you literally, you have an interface there, and you can drag onto it what it's going to do, and you can drag the image into it, and then there you go. So there's your interface there. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
I'm just trying to think of a good.
I mean, this is what made Stream Deck is the fact that you can drag all this stuff in.
Yeah, if you want to do, let's do a tweet, so we can go in here, and of course, for the Twitter tweet to work, you'll have to actually set the API in the background in the settings. But then once you do that, you go down to the bottom here. You can title it. You can put a picture in as either set from a file or create new icon. And what that'll do is that'll actually take you to a web page where it has a whole bunch of icons you can download and then create in there. You put a name in there like blah, blah, whatever. You can go into whatever account, add account from there, and then put in your tweet. And then every time you hit that button, it can send it off to your Twitter saying, hey, I'm live right now, or whatnot.
And that can be like, if you think about it, like I actually tweeted this out. I don't usually tweet that much out to this, because if you tweet a YouTube link in Twitter, you get penalized. So your viral nature becomes less viral if you put YouTube into a Twitter account. And so I don't do it very often, but I decided this one was worth tweeting out, or that I thought it'd be interesting to some folks that are following me. But you can imagine, wanting to hit something right at the beginning of the show and just being able to tap on it here and being able to just send out something you've pre-approved. I had to like cut and paste it and do all the old-fashioned stuff. Go ahead, Chris.
Are you saying that just in general your account gets dinged? Because I think I remember hearing, Bill, didn't you say that you first found office hours because I was tweeting it every morning when I started?
I think that was my initial introduction, is that you pinged something that I saw go by.
So you will not, what you give up when you start tweeting YouTube links or any link to another social network, is what you give up is did you miss it yet or whatever. You'll still see in the raw feed, but all the things that Twitter does that's on top of that, the kind of the quote unquote smart list that happens before you get to the raw list,
right?
You basically give that up when you for a long time.
So my followers will see it, but it won't be recommended to other people.
It also won't be brought back up to the top. I mean, I know we're getting caught off, but
no, I'm sorry.
It won't be brought back up to the top, where even if they didn't see it, they'll see it again. Remember that things that you might have missed, that list, Twitter will take that out if you take you out of that if you start linking to external social networks. A lot of us have figured that out.
And it's good to know. Yeah.
Anyway, let's go to the next question.
Jonas Teller in Germany says, is there a way to, in Companion, to set up so that a button gets disabled after it's pressed for a long time, like 200 milliseconds? We have problems with double pressing cut, for example. So he'd like it if you hold it down, it reverses the action.
Yeah, absolutely. You can do that. You can also set it up so it goes through a chain. So it can say after so many milliseconds, do this. After so many milliseconds, do this. There is a button down press and a button up press. So you just have to go to there's a big drop down menu that gives you a whole bunch of options for that.
That's been my biggest complaint about the Stream Deck is there's sometimes when I hit it and it does something twice, or I hit it and it doesn't do exactly what I wanted immediately. And that has been, I haven't gotten out of that problem. That it happens every once in a while. It doesn't happen very often, but it happens often enough that that's why we switch over to hardware when we go to really high level events. The Stream Deck does stuff that I can at least cut away from if it doesn't do what I expect it to. Next question.
Vincent Alvarez from Bellingham, Washington. What's faster to find the right button at a glance? A color choice, text, an image, symbols, button placement, or perhaps something else?
Go ahead, Jeff.
Found something by accident. Laid my solder gun on mine when it was a little hotter than it should have been. Not like by purpose, of course. And so I have a nice tactile feedback on one of my buttons, and that's my normal, I call it my oh crap button. So I could
you can reach
rub my
down there
finger
and just
over
hit
it. I know where it is.
That's great. Go ahead, Chris, and then Jeffrey.
That's a hack. That's a great hack.
First of all, I think on the 15 button, there is an extra little bump on the center key.
Right at the bottom, there's a little ridge.
Yeah. Right at the bottom of it. And I will say that as somebody who's switched thousands of hours of live television, broadcast television, sports and whatnot, to me, the tactile physical position is more important than the pretty picture on it. Although my wife did make me put her picture on one of the buttons.
Yeah, the 15 button does have the bump, the 32 does not. I don't know about the 6, but I rarely miss hitting a button.
But with a soldering iron, we could fix that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We can make it into Braille easily.
That's right, Braille code.
The one thing that that I like to do is just make it really clear, and so colors mean something. Big images don't get cute. I mean, like unless it means something, because if you're looking over during a live event, you want it to be something that you can read really fast, and so that's the one thing that in general button design that's useful. Go ahead, Schy.
Well, and to that point, as Jeffrey was showing the interface, if you wanted to use words, I know that's a thing that confuses Chris, but you can actually, they give you the font capability of making the words larger and smaller and repositioning them in that little tiny space. It's pretty magical how quickly you can modify that.
Other than single numbers, I probably never use words on my Stream Deck. It's always some image that tells me what it is, just because I can grok it faster. Next, but I'm dyslexic, so it's a horrible thing to put words in there. I'll be like, I don't know what that means. All right, next. Okay.
Well, for me, really quick, for me, it's just I have two buttons. One that's the screen, and if I do a split, I'll have text in there saying split and then regular screen. So that works for me.
Next question. Let's jump to the next question.
Roscoe Jones on the panel. Do you find it easy to move from system to system, or do you prefer to keep it in a single system and just buy more Stream Decks?
Anyone have an opinion about that?
I'd love to buy more Stream Decks.
We actually do move from system to system quite a bit, and we just have the profile on there. And so if you have the profile on there, you plug it in. Now the problem is we need to label our Stream Decks because it's by the ID of the Stream Deck. So I found it's a lot easier if you know which Stream Deck you're plugging into what computer. When we got a stack of servers, it's kind of confusing at times. But yeah, it is so fast to program. I'll just copy from one machine to the other the profiles if we need it. If it's a live stream studio, for instance, it's keyboard shortcut only, so we have to use that profile at the time. But yeah, we definitely use a bunch of them and move them around all the time. I keep one in my backpack.
Right. Yeah.
I don't leave without it.
Does it have non-volatile RAM within the Stream Deck itself, or does it have to always load its profile when you plug it in?
You have to have the software on. There is no non-volatile RAM on it, so you have to have the Stream Deck, either the Stream Deck or the companion, or now Central Control. One software has to be running in order to use it.
Next question.
Brian Stockton, Des Moines, Iowa. Is it possible to create buttons to switch to other Stream Deck profiles?
To other Stream Deck profiles? That's a good question. I thought it was asking if you can
Feels like
actually
that would be kind of
control
like a
all Stream Decks
page.
with that.
Yeah,
But
Beju?
Yeah, it does. It gives you an option during the basic settings that you can set up a button and you can select either to switch between the different buttons or to go to a specific one of the profiles as a page. You can do it either way. It doesn't let you do up and down like you can do in Companion. So you cannot switch using up and down, but you can cycle through the different pages.
That's what I was
Or
trying
go
to ask
specific.
earlier. Yeah.
Next question.
Brian Enright in New York City. Besides Discord, is there a good place to go for getting started with Stream Decks? You were here today.
Elgato was
YouTube. YouTube has some really good information. It's just sorting through it.
And remember that
Yeah.
we're asking this. We're having a whole hour about Stream Deck to introduce people to Stream Deck, to talk about how and to cross pollinate. You can ask Stream Deck questions every day. There's enough of us, as you can see, there's enough of us here using them that we probably will be able to answer questions about Stream Deck almost any given day of the week. Beju and then Jeffrey.
Yeah, if you're basically getting started on Stream Deck is good with YouTube. If you want to get more into Companion, there's a very active Facebook Companion group where you can, a lot of people, a lot of new users are coming in and people are pretty helpful. So they can get you to talk you through a lot of the basic stuff. And for more complicated stuff, there is a Slack group as well. For
And we'll be soon doing a second hour on Companion, as well as building more up in Discord. And I would bring in Central Control as well. I mean, I want people to kind of really get those things. So hopefully maybe we can get those guys on as well. Jeffrey?
Yeah, Elgato did a whole bunch of videos right around Christmas time on how to use the Stream Deck. Plus, there's also actually BitFocus has the Companion Discord page. It's a good idea to get on that.
Yep. Next question.
Moving on to Vincent Alvarez of Bellingham, Massachusetts. Again, has anyone modified their deck? I used to have a pinstripe colored something taped to segment certain buttons. Tried also a cabinet bumper sticker to give the tactile cue, I suppose, to find certain buttons. We were just talking about that with the soldering iron thing. Any other ideas?
There are skins.
Sorry?
There are skins that you can buy.
I was also
used
thinking one of those corn pads like moleskin might probably stick it on a button and have a real easy tactile.
I found that the matte, like kind of the matte sticker that you put on a monitor that sticks, that's got like adhesive to it, not a monitor, but on a window. There are these little, and I cut them out and I put them on there, and I usually put them on something that I hit all the time, so I can reach across and feel it and not have to look down. But that's the only one that I found. Then I can still see through it. That's the issue.
Yeah, I forgot they were transparent, so that would be a much better
And then there's
solution.
Jeff's, which is just use a soldering iron. Go ahead, Jeff.
Well, besides my soldering, that was actually by accident. But no, a good friend of mine actually has a 3D printer, and he just recently did a frame for his, and then puts his Raspberry Pi underneath it. So now he's got this box. It's a little bit larger than I have an XL here. So with this on it, I normally don't use the little stand thing. I usually like mine flat. But he was able to make that, and then it's all included in that box, and they're using it for show control. And so whenever he sets that down, with everything is right there. So that was one of the best modifications I saw. Very smooth. And there again on the couple of the Discord or the Facebook groups or the different groups, there's guys out there, especially in the BitFocus realm, that are in Companion realm, where they're doing 19-inch rack mounts with multiple Stream Decks in there to run their shows and stuff. So there's a lot of good ideas to modify them to that.
Absolutely. Next question.
Nick Pavlinek of Southeast Michigan, who was in earlier, says, does Stream Deck create a log of all keys pressed for a session?
No. I've never seen a log.
I'm sure that you could
Companion-
create something that would
Yeah, you could
hear
probably
it.
create it, but I know
the
Companion has the log there, but yeah, nothing on Stream Deck natively.
Next question.
David Brady of New York, is OSC osculator still a valid player in the MIDI OSC space?
definitely. Go ahead, Roscoe.
Yeah, ProPresenter, that's the only way they can get signals out to OSC is through Osculator. So yes, it's still valid.
Next question.
Mark Flesher, Tucson, Arizona. Has anyone figured out a way to trigger Apple HomeKit devices from a Stream Deck?
Good question.
I bet you could use if this then that, or you know, the Apple internal one to do some of that. Go ahead, Roscoe.
I was going to say, you can push something to Apple script. That should certainly be able to do it.
I wonder if you could trigger Automator. That's on all Macs.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't think anyone's tried it. Next question.
Michael Vosbein, Woodstock, Georgia. Is there a way to assign Stream Deck buttons to individual USB cameras in Zoom, or must I scroll through them?
I don't know. Go ahead, Beju.
I think right now the only way is to use the global keyboard shortcut through Zoom settings, and that just cycles through. This is something where probably Andy could probably have a better solution using Zoom OSC.
Right. Yep. Next question. Go ahead, Jeffrey, real quick.
The only problem with doing something like that is if new cameras get introduced or are removed, then it's gonna change the list. It would be like asking if I could set up a Stream Deck to grab this panel and go to, you know, pin Guy when I need to, pin Schy when I need to, and it's an ever constant moving target.
Yep. Next question.
Our often panelist Hasmukh Gajar of Cape Town, South Africa. Checking XL prices in South Africa. Many mention the Corsair Elgato. What's Corsair?
Corsair is that is the parent company that does that. Go ahead, Jeffrey, really fast.
Yeah, Corsair was the original. They created it, and Corsair bought Elgato in 2018. Elgato was the original company name.
Next question.
Michael Fraley of Dallas Fort Worth. What are all you guys using Discord for? This is the first place I've heard of it.
Not quite enough. No, yeah, it's we use Discord. You can if you get here in the morning between 6:40 and 6:45, we'll put up a Discord link, and it's where all of us talk between all of these shows. So it's how we maintain these conversations and links, and you know, we don't it's where we write everything down. So go ahead, Roscoe, real quick.
Like I say, what aren't we using it for is more likely the question.
This, you know, there's on any given day, there's a couple hundred people here concurrent, about 400 to 600 people unique come through listening to this every day. And then there's 1,000 people on Discord, of which, you know, 600 or 700 come within every month. So it's a growing community of us and as it keeps on getting bigger, now that we've talked about this, there'll be more people talking about this thing. Zoom OSC is going to kind of blow up, and there'll be other things that blow up as we go into it. So we're kind of building, you know, what I call a nutrient-rich environment for us to learn on a day-to-day basis. Go ahead, Bill, and then Courtney.
And one of the magics of Discord is that you get the group chat, but you can also individually link with an individual that you see in the panel and have a chat back and forth that's not a public chat. So that's really useful.
Yeah, go ahead, Courtney.
That's basically what I was going to say. And we use it during the show itself as a back channel communications for private line chats to tell somebody, you know, you got a problem with this or you got a problem with that, and it doesn't face publicly. So.
Yep. Next question.
Guy Cochran with the last one from Seattle. Can you show Companion building a button for an ATEM macro?
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Okay, so this is the Companion backend of things. You have to first of all, you have to set up where your devices are. If you're using, you know, like I have my Viscero hotkey set up here in my ATEM Mini and stuff like that. Then you go over to the buttons and you go to a blank page. You basically click on one of the buttons and you go through the configuration. However you want to do it, you want to set the button type. You want it as a regular button, page up, number down, whatever. We'll say regular button. We'll say, what do we want on the key up and down? And this all depends on what you have activated in that first screen, because that will determine what's in the drop down. But we can say internal button press or something like that. You can set that for however you want to. You just go through the drop downs to make that happen. For the first button, if you need to set up a second button, you just keep going down the list, and then you do another thing, and then you can add more and add more. So it can do a whole bunch of different things as you go.
That's great. And we're gonna do a whole second hour on companion soon enough. So next couple weeks, that was my goal. So we'll talk about that and we'll get geeky about that process. Well, we have made it again to the end of another couple hours of Tech Talk. I thought it was great. I just want to thank all the Jeffs, the Jeffreys and the Jeffs and everyone else who has been brought their expertise to this. I think there's a lot of us that are using it, and it's just always amazing to me how we kind of collect a great panel for these and great questions, really focused and really great questions from the attendees. Great answers. Obviously, I think this was a great discussion. I think the discussions keep on getting better. Every day, we're getting better and better discussions. So thanks to the panelists for showing up and sharing what they know. It's fantastic. And so anyway, so thanks so much. Tomorrow we're going to talk about hosting. So we'll just talk about the process of hosting and what you want to think about and how you want to kind of approach that. And so definitely come in for that. Ray Maxwell, there he goes. Ray's going to be talking about color theory on Friday. Pretty excited about that. And then we've got the South by Southwest crew from the education group coming in and talking on Saturday. And that'll be for an hour, the second hour. And then we go right into Andy's Zoom OSC. So it's a busy week. Go ahead, Stuart.
Speaking of hosting, you're now the host, sir, and any feedback anyone wants to throw at me, good or bad, about whether the switching is good, I will take on board.
And I did figure out a way to manage the whole post-show fiasco that I had yesterday, so we'll be jumping into the post-show right now. So if anyone wants to keep the conversation going, I have to get to work, so hopefully someone jumps in that can take the reins, because I gotta shoot. The crew's showing up right now. So anyway, so we'll go ahead and I'm gonna leave. I'll see you guys all soon. See a lot of you tomorrow.